Why would it say then in Avajurved, in the 32nd chapter in the second verse, that there's no image of him? And we see so many images here in the Hindu tradition.
Well, there's
That's fine. Sorry, go ahead. Now, what I wanted to ask here is, in addition to that question, is when I was looking at the Veda, and I memorized the Hindu, the Sanskrit, just to, yes, a little bit of it, not all of it. I think it's in the sixth chapter, in the fourth section, in the first verse, it says Ikam Ividityam. So where it says that God is one without a second.
right.
And it's also mentioned, in it's also mentioned in the Vedas, in Ajurveda, in the 32nd chapter, in the second verse, that God has no image, there's no likeness of God. Which obviously, as a Muslim, when I approach this kind of information, it's more familiar to me because we believe in monotheism and we believe in one God and things like that. So how would you reconcile the fact, this is my question really, that the Vedas and the Vedic literature in general make it very clear that you should only believe in one God on the one hand, but then there are these mentions of multiplicity of gods in the Vedic literature.
Right. Well, first of all, the idea is that God has no material form, like we have a material form, which is temporary and defective in so many ways. But He has a spiritual form. So when there's a reference to God as not having a form, it's meaning He doesn't have a form like ours.
What about the other reference that He's one without a second? How would you deal with that?
That's true. Well, although He's one without a second, that He can expand Himself into forms of equal potency, and He's still the same person.
Let me tell you something that the Quran says, and I just want you to give me your opinion on it, because it's quite interesting you're saying this. In the Quran, in the 23rd chapter, in the 91st verse, if I'm correctly remembering, it makes the argument that had there been more than one God, that each of those gods would fight one another for the ultimate dominion, or for the ultimate, so they will be fighting each other. And if you think of it from a philosophical perspective, if we think of God as having one will, if you will, right? And what makes God God is the fact that He is able to put everything underneath Him, as you mentioned before with Vishnu, Krishna, isn't it? So the fact that He is able to subordinate everything else, and that He is the ultimate power and the ultimate will. In other words, no will can supersede His will. Do you see what I mean? So the question of how could it be the case that there is more than one God, I guess my question to you is, how could it be the case that you can have more than one ultimate God which has more than one ultimate will? Wouldn't the wills contradict each other?
Well, see, when you have Krishna expanding into Vishnu, the same person is manifesting multifariously. So it's not a question of multiple beings, but a being with multiple forms acting in different ways.
So are you talking about like pantheism, if you will?
No, because he's the same person.
Right. So
there's no real difference between Krishna and Vishnu.
So you don't believe in pantheism, or do you do believe in pantheism?
See, I think pantheism is where God is sort of spread out everywhere.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we don't believe in pantheism. We believe that God is spread out everywhere, but He doesn't lose His identity as a supreme person.
And once again, are you talking about Krishna here, or are you talking about?
Vishnu,
okay.
Krishna. Then.
So all right.
But there's a term known as Vishnu Tattva, which refers to the category of God.
So why would it say then in Avajurved, in the 32nd chapter in the second verse, that there's no image of Him? And we see so many images here in the Hindu tradition.
Well, there's like I say, there's God has no material form. So when God is described as without form, it means He has no material form.
So you do believe in a God?
There's other places where it's described that God has a spiritual form.
Right.
And even in the Christian tradition, there's an idea that we are created in the image of God, which implies that God has an actual form. And there's actually within within the Puranas, there's places where God says, you can make a model of my form out of these 8 elements, and you can worship it according to these rules, and through the medium of this form, I will reciprocate.
Okay, but what we're trying to establish here is really whether or not you believe that God is one.
Yeah, God is one.
So you do believe in God is one?
Yeah, so there's like one verse, this is from the Upanishads. It goes, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitana Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam, Yoga Vedari Kamam. Of all eternal beings, there's one being. Of all conscious beings, there's one being, one conscious being, and that being is fulfilling all the desires of all the other beings.
That's very interesting.
That's what
so you do believe in a monotheistic entity that controls the universes, that created the universes.
Yes.
Would you say that? Would you say that God is most merciful and all powerful and potent?
Yes.
And would you ascribe those traditional sort of Abrahamic attributes of God that you'd find in the Abrahamic religions to your idea of God, your concept of God?
Yeah, to Krishna or Vishnu. Whereas this Brahma and Shiva, they are just in the same. They're in the category of Jiva Tattva, which means.
Do you believe in these? Just to cut you and ask you before this question comes out of my mind. And this might seem like a funny question, but once again, you have to appreciate that we're coming from a different.
For sure,
right.
Sure.
So you know these. So like for example, Ganesh and the elephant god and all of these gods. Do you believe that they are actual beings, that they actually existed, that they are real?
That's how they're described, and it's described that people interacted with them at different times, but generally not at this time, because at this period in time they're not. The people aren't qualified to worship them. They're not worshipped properly.
Okay, so
therefore they don't appear.
So are they real or not?
They're real, but they're not. They're not on the level of God. They're all subordinate to God.
Okay, so that's interesting. So we both believe in an entity that has everything as a subordinate.
Right. Yeah.
So God is the entity that has everything else as a subordinate.
Right.
So I think that's
how
interesting.
Krishna is described in the Bible.
Yeah. So I think that's a point of agreement.
Yeah, that's a main point of agreement.
So would you say that let me tell you our perspective, right? Because the way we say it is this: just once again, just to give you our insight, we say that we believe in one God.
Right.
That one God is separate from the creation inextricably, like in his actual essence.
Right.
So, for example, God is all-knowing. We believe that God is all-knowing, He's merciful, but His mercy and knowledge is everywhere.
Right.
But that He Himself isn't inextricably everywhere like that. Yeah. So He's not within me and He's not within you, which is an important way to understand the difference between God, the Creator, and the creation. That's the first thing we would say. The second thing we would really say is that this one God, who's all-powerful and is merciful and is the creator of the heavens and the earth, that the purpose of life, we would say, there is a purpose of life, and that the purpose of life is to, first of all, come to realize this God, and secondly, come to worship this God. So really, this is it. So to know this God and to worship this God. Once that's been established, then you should follow the God's rules. We would ask, where does God's rules come from? So we would say once again that, I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but we believe that one God has sent many messengers. So from, to say Adam is a prophet, or Noah is a messenger, and from all of these individuals had one primary message and one primary really command for the people, which was to worship in one God and to believe in one God. So the purpose of life, in a nutshell, from an Islamic perspective, is to worship God. And that one God that created me and that created you, that one God that is all-powerful and all-knowing, and all these kind of things. Would you say that makes sense, considering where you're coming from?
Yeah, that all can be supported by Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, so it does make sense. Interesting. So
basically, Krishna says 4 things. Think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer homage to me. It says those 4 things.
All right. So, what I don't have a problem with it, because what we say is that, people have this misconception, really, that before Islam started with the Prophet Muhammad. You see what I mean? In the 7th century. We say Islam is a word which is actually derived from another Arabic word called istislam, which is submission.
Right.
So really, we believe that the way to do your purpose is to be submissive to God. to do what he wants you to do, and that he sent messengers aforetime, all of which had the same primary message. So it could very well be the case that he sent messengers and prophets to India. You know, I mean, because there is one weak tradition. It is weak, but it's an interesting tradition that says there's 124,000 prophets that were sent aforetime. You know, and each to their own people in their own time. So it's very, very conceivable to suggest that maybe there was a prophet that went to India, and he spread the message of God, and then that message, which is the Mabarat, for example, or the word God's word, then became changed, became a little bit, you know, corrupted. I mean, I'm not saying that Hinduism is, I mean, this is the thing. I'm not saying that some of the verses you mentioned I really associate with them. So I'm not saying Hinduism is all wrong. I'm saying there's some parts of it which are right and some parts of it are wrong, which I think you could identify with as well. But we would say that the final messenger really is the Prophet Muhammad, and that the difference between him and all the other prophets and messengers is that he came for all people and all times, and that the book, which is the Quran, which was revealed to him, is the only book to be preserved, the only religious book in ancient religious history that has ever been preserved, and that this is a testimony to his authenticity. Yeah. So just a quick question: would you say that this is a conceivable belief system where all of these prophets and messengers came with that same message, and that they told their people to believe in one God and worship in one God?
Yeah, basically, our spiritual teacher actually says something about that in one of the purports in the Bhagavad Gita, which is very much along the lines of what you say. I have Bhagavad Gita on my phone.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think we should all have a Bhagavad Gita, you know, on our phones. Just to
download Gitabase. Go to gitabase.com.
Nice. Any other websites you want to advertise, my friend?
Well, no, Gitabase is the best one. I'm not too. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, no problem.
There's one called Krishna.com too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And also there's Quran.com, man.
Really? There is.
Might as well throw that in.
Is there?
Yeah, Quran.com. The whole Quran is there.
How is it spelled exactly?
Quran.com. It's interesting, you know, for any person who wants to see what the Quran says in English language. You could refer to that one.